bees had been living in this backyard shed for at least 2 years. The landlord wanted to call an exterminator, but the family who lived here wanted to save the bees, so they called me. When I lifted up the floor, I found a huge hive full of gentle bees. The hive was so big that I had to remove another section of floor to access the entire thing. Then I started removing the hive. Whatever I removed from the original hive went right into the new one so that the bees would have everything they need to survive. After I removed all of the comb, I started scooping bees into the new hive. As soon as I put the bees by the new hive, they marched right in. Then a stream of bees began running out from under the floor into the new hive. So I waited and watched to see if I could spot the queen bee in the crowd. After about 15 minutes, she appeared, so I put her in a clip to keep her safe. Once the queen was in the new hive, some bees began sending signals to help the other bees find their way home. I left the hive overnight to give every bee time to move in, and by the next morning, the colony was in their new home, and it was another great day of saving the bees. There was a big beehive under the floor of this shed, but as soon as I started to remove the hive, most of the bees moved to the outside wall, so I started to scoop the bees into the new hive with my hands. As a professional beekeeper, I've learned how to read the bees' behavior, and I could tell that these bees were calm and did not want to sting me. They just wanted to get into their new hive. So I kept scooping bees off the wall while looking for the queen bee. When the bees are gentle, I prefer to wear as little protective gear as possible. The less gear I'm wearing, the more dexterity and agility I have. After scooping most of the bees off the wall, I didn't see any signs of the queen. So I went back in the shed to look for her, and there she was, surrounded by her attendant bees. I put her in a clip to keep her safe, and as soon as I put the queen in the new hive, all of the other bees followed her pheromones and went into the new hive on their own. I waited for all the bees to get into their new home, then I closed up the hive, and it was another great day of saving the bees. Bees were living in this water meter, and I was called to remove them, so I lifted the cover to reveal a beautiful hive. The bees hadn't been there for very long, but they had already built a lot of comb. The comb had eggs and baby bees, which let me know that the colony had a healthy queen. There was also pollen and nectar, but there was barely any honey yet. I put the comb into frames of the new hive so the bees would have everything they need after I moved them. I always wear protective gear when I need to, but these bees were very gentle and did not sting me. After I removed all of the comb, I started scooping bees into the new hive with my hands. As I was scooping bees, I noticed that the bees were going straight into the new hive, which let me know that the queen was probably already in there, so I gave the bees some smoke to move them a little quicker. Just like you and I do, bees move away from smoke, so as I used my smoker, the bees marched out of the old hive and into the new one to follow their queen. I waited for all the bees to get into their new hive, then I closed up the hive, loaded it into my truck, and it was another great day of saving the bees. Here's how I removed a beehive from a backyard shed. The bees were living under the floor. I found the hive entrance, but to see the size and location, I used my thermal camera. Then I cut into the floor where the bees were located. I carefully lifted the piece I cut out and discovered a beautiful hive full of honey. Since the bees were gentle and it was over 100 degrees out, I took off my veil, enjoyed some fresh honey, and went to work removing bees. I scooped the bees into a temporary travel hive while looking for the queen. As a professional beekeeper, I've learned how to read the bees' behavior and could tell that these bees would not sting me. Next, I removed the comb structure of the hive that had baby bees and food, and I put it into frames so that the bees would have everything they need in their new home. Suddenly, I saw the queen surrounded by her attendant bees. I put her in a clip to keep her safe, and all of the other bees followed her into the new hive. So I closed up the hive, carefully picked it up, loaded it into my truck to take the bees to their new home, and it was another great day of saving the bees. I got a call to remove a colony of bees from this backyard compost bin, and here's how I did it. First, I started to carefully remove the comb structure of the hive. I fit the pieces of comb that had baby bees and the bees' food into wooden frames. Next, it was time to start scooping bees into the new hive. I always wear protective equipment when I need to, but since I work with bees almost every day, I've learned to read their behavior and could tell that these bees, like most honeybees, were very gentle and would not try to sting me. So I kept removing comb and removing bees from the bin, all while looking for the queen bee. After I removed most of the bees, I saw the queen crawling up the side of the bin, so I put her in a clip to keep her safe. She's the largest bee in the colony, which makes her a little easier to find. There she is. I put the queen in the new hive, and all the other bees started to follow her in. I had to get a bigger hive because there were so many bees, but after most of them went in the hive, I closed it up and carried it back to my truck, and it was another great day of saving the bees.
pull up a frame and see what we have. Oh, wow. So we have got some beautiful, fresh, white honeycomb. That looks great. So the bees are building comb, which is a good sign. It takes a lot of resources for them to make this beeswax and build this comb. They have to eat about 8 ounces of honey to make 1 ounce of beeswax. So this is already a good sign of a healthy hive. You can see they're making that beautiful honeycomb shape. They're filling it with nectar. They're doing everything they should be doing right now in this time of year. I'm going to put this back in the hive. And I've got 3 main goals for every hive inspection for colonies that I know are already healthy. First and foremost, I want to make sure they have a strong queen. Secondly, I'm going to make sure that they have the right amount of space. And lastly, I want to make sure they have enough food. Tour of one of my apiaries. This is one of about 25 apiaries that I manage, but it happens to be my personal favorite because it's right here in my own backyard. We've got about 15 active beehives here right now, and we'll be adding much more in the spring. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my apiary setup and why I chose the equipment that I did. When you think of a beehive, I think a lot of people think that it's just chaos and completely disorderly inside the hive. And you go into a beehive and it's very orderly, and there's a reason that the bees are doing everything within the hive. And I just didn't understand that much about the honeybee colony as a superorganism before I became a beekeeper and really started to experience that myself every day. I think it's amazing the way they all work together for the good of the hive. Bees are incredibly important to our world. They're important to our food systems and our ecosystems. They pollinate 1/3 out of all the food we eat. So if you think about that, 1 out of every 3 bites of food we eat is dependent on honeybees. You know, without them, the human race wouldn't survive, really. Governor Abbott. My name is Erika Thompson and I'm a beekeeper in Austin, Texas. Bees are incredibly important to our ecosystem, and they actually pollinate 1 out of every 3 bites of food we eat. However, they're also dying at alarming rates. Will you support a ban on the harmful pesticides that have been proven to be killing our bees?